There's really only one way to put it. Last night was incredible for the Auburn Tigers.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. We're joined by, of course, the Montgomery radio legend himself, the Darrell Dapprich. And Darrell, I mean, what we all saw last night, at Auburn's 43-41 victory over Texas A&M. I mean, with all of the implications that this win now seems to have, if Auburn gets it going and everything that Hugh Freeze is selling and building towards comes to fruition, we will point to last night as the turning point for when it happens.
Absolutely. I mean, there is nothing about that that's, overly exaggerated or overly hyped. I thought about that as I was leaving the stadium last night. There were a lot of implications and a lot of things on the line that even people don't kind of realize behind the scenes. I think there are three things. Number one, Auburn needed a win like that, period. They needed a win against a ranked opponent at home, period. No matter how they won the game. If they, just getting the win was very important. Number two, the recruiting aspect of it and the recruits that were there. It was very, very advantageous for those recruits to see that environment, that atmosphere, and then to pay it off with the win. Before they even won the game, to have that kind of electric atmosphere with a 4-6 football team speaks volumes about this program, this fan base, what Auburn is. And so I think that was very, very crucial. And then the third thing quickly is how they did it. All the ghosts of Christmas past was there on the field. It was every bad script, tape, replaying your head, blew a lead, penalties, turnovers, missed field goals. I mean, it was like you were watching a movie or a dream sequence all over again. Yeah. And yet they found a way to tie the game and win the game, in overtime when their backs were against the wall. So I think that's really important too. Yes, it would have been important if Auburn jumped out 21-0 and just rode that momentum and held on and won 21-10 or whatever. Of course it would have been. But it's almost more important that they blew the lead twice and came back, tied it, and took the lead, I think, for the psyche of this football team.
Yeah, and who it was against. I mean, Texas A&M is a top 15 program. If Texas A&M had won that game, everybody would be talking about how clear their path to the college football playoff is now at this point. Yeah. And I mean, if one of those overtimes goes the other direction, that's the discussion today, is that in this chaotic weekend of college football, Texas A&M survived. Fortunately, that's not the storyline. Auburn contributed to one of the craziest weekends in college football this season with so many ranked teams losing. But to me, this is about future, and it's about, it's just so symbolic because it's like the guys who went through the crud over the last few years, the lowest few years of Auburn football in recent memory in decades. Darrell, you've talked about that a ton. I think it's cool because if Auburn does start to ascend, like we all think it's going to, if it started last night, at least those seniors got a little bit of a piece of it. At least they get a little sliver of this potential run that Auburn's setting itself up to go on. And I think that's symbolic. I think it's really, really cool because, I mean, the night that Jarquez Hunter had, the night that Keandre Lambert-Smith had, the scene of Eugene Asante coming off the field before the game after the senior day presentation, that hit me, man. That hit me with how emotional he was. He was crying. It's like, I'm glad they got a taste of it because they deserve it. And I thought, especially the game-tying drive in the fourth quarter, Peyton Thorne with an incredible run there, but I mean, Jarquez Hunter deserved that drive. Like, he deserved all of those touches, and he got them. And I think just kind of the symbolism in this is pretty cool.
Well, you make an excellent point about this was a big win for Auburn in the present, but I think it's even bigger for the future. Okay. Honestly, there's still some things to play for this year in the present, in the moment. So that win salvaged that. Okay. Let's be honest with that. That win kept Auburn in bowl eligibility, competition. So in the moment, it's big because it keeps in the present, but for the future. And I think when you keep using words like symbolic, I think about how Auburn football a couple years ago was really just, it was so depressing and down in the dumps with the whole Harsin thing. And you and I did a show one night and we said, this is the first time we feel hope. This is the first time we feel like the future of this program is going to be okay. It gave us something to believe in. And ironically, it was on a chilly night in Jordan-Hare against Texas A&M. And how things like that come full circle is amazing because that's when we started to believe that there is a brighter future. And I think last night, on a different level with the recruits and the ones that social media and all that stuff that was going on, locker room celebrations and being there and feeling and hearing and seeing the environment did feel different last night. It felt like a turning point.
I've got a proposition. I know it's not realistic, but what if could we just play Texas A&M at home every week?
Gosh.
It'd be exhausting because we'd be just so hyped up all the time.
Right.
But goodness, wouldn't life be a little bit better if that was the case? I'm joking.
We've had some really good games and some really kind of feel good moments against that program. It's kind of funny.
Let me ask you this. So right after the game, you think about like all the impact that it could possibly have, and you just kind of get on social media to see all these people tweeting stats and their perspective, and a lot of cool videos of people rushing the field and stuff. But then you see several of the players, as well as like the Auburn football stuff, tweeting out the Mike Elko and his slip up saying Texas, he's focused on Texas instead of Auburn last week, which we talked about. Like, this isn't a big deal unless he loses to Auburn. Well, he lost to Auburn. And I kind of love the edginess from the official Auburn team saying like, when they tweeted out the final score graphic, they're like, good luck with Texas.
Yeah, like, and showed the clip. Well,
so savage.
Look,
savage.
It was even more savage if they showed it on the video board.
Oh,
did you know that?
No.
As soon as the game ended, they showed the clip on the video board, and it was very short, and it had Elko saying, we're just focused on Texas, and they made the screen go black. And people went
Did they go crazy?
It was so
I didn't know that.
And it was fantastic. I will say this too. There's no way to quantify. There's no way to prove whether or not that came to fruition. And they overlooked Auburn a little bit. I got into a debate on a talk show last week about it. But I will say this. I think it's leaning more towards they did the way they fell behind so fast and how flat they were. You see, when you fall behind 21-0 like that, have a turnover, miss field goal, look sluggish, it lends itself to early on. Maybe they were, then they got punched in the mouth, shook off the cobwebs and said, we better get it going. And they did.
Yeah. I also think that shows how good of a team A&M is. Like, I don't think this is a team that's like overranked or anything like that. No. Like, this is I think they are a top 15 football team. I mean, they didn't really fall that much. I think they're 20 now, and it's like, okay, that's fine, whatever. But
don't you think, Zach, that a lesser team, a team that was outside the top 20, they fall behind 21-0 in that environment, and I think they fold their tents. A lot of teams would have got beat 28-10, 28-7 last night, and they didn't. And that shows the makeup, like you said, of their football team.
Yeah, I mean, I think A&M is a good football team, 100%. And there's going to be a narrative that they're not as good because they lost again, and they're probably going to lose to Texas, and like their record's not going to be as impressive. Like, don't let that take. Like, Texas A&M is a good football team, and people are going to try to tell you that they weren't, and it's not true. It's not true. I can already feel it coming.
Yeah,
but I think Elko has done a great job there, and I think A&M is a good football team. I also wondered. I didn't really buy into the fact, and clearly I was wrong here. I was wrong about a lot of this game, but I was wrong about if the players would care about Elko saying that they're focused on Texas instead of Auburn. And with all the players tweeting and obviously Auburn itself, like, doing it like, oh, clearly, okay, it was bulletin board material. I was wrong on that, which I'm glad because clearly the motivation was there.
I'm kicking myself, and I was on the way home last night for not asking that question in the press conference, for not saying, hey, coach, I know you guys probably saw the clip. Did you use it for motivation? Did you share it with your players? He probably would have been coy about it, but I still want to see the answer. I still would have wanted to see the answer. And I was so focused on the game and little components of things that happened.
Did you ask a question?
I did. I asked the DeMarcus Riddick question that you texted me about, just for you, Big Daddy. I did that for you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Which was, it was the second overtime?
Yeah, I just asked him, with as much as he talked about how key Riddick was and how they're a different defense with him on the field, why wasn't he?
He wasn't on the field. It was the second overtime that I would text you about, right? Yeah.
And
the most important defensive stand of the game, arguably. And I texted you, I'm like, why is Riddick not on the field? It was all Mausi that drive.
He said that DeMarcus Riddick plays in two packages, base package and what they call rabbit package, which means you just get after the quarterback and go get it. He does not play when they're in nickel. A&M did a good job of realizing that and went with some different fronts late in the game that kept him off the field. Well, there you go. We had somebody. Yep. So they listened to the press conference. Yes. Yeah. So it was a great explanation. And then after I thought he was done explaining it, he kept on explaining it and started breaking down like offensive formations that they were in, and they ran this and they ran that. Yeah. We didn't see that on film, and they never. He was really detailed in that. Gave me like a 3-minute answer. So yeah, that was my question.
The thing that's weird about that to me is like in nickel. I know nickel is based off of personnel, but when you typically run nickel, is when you think there's a threat to pass, and when you need to cover more ground, you get more athletes on the field. And like Riddick is just so good at moving left to right. Like he seems like the perfect guy in that package, but I'm sure it has to do with age and experience and all of that.
He said they do not want to throw that much on him. It's already a lot to learn in the two packages he's out there on. So
yeah.
But when you texted me that, I was like, man, that's a great question. I got to ask. I got to find out. So
yeah. And normally when coaches talk a lot and like I give a long-winded answer and get into details, he probably liked the question too. That's cool. That's cool. All right, let's there's just a million different angles to go. Let's talk about this from a recruiting perspective, because we can put a lot of things to bed now. Thank goodness. That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The line for the Iron Bowl is out. FanDuel has Auburn as an 11.5-point dog on the road against Alabama. I like Auburn plus 11.5 in this game.
I do too. I love trying to guess. We didn't get a chance to do that last night, like guess what the line's going to be. And the first thing that popped in my mind was 9. I thought it was going to be 9.
Mine was single digits. It wasn't 11. I think this is high. I think this is high. And Darrell, call me crazy, but Auburn, the money line plus 320. I'm looking at it. Yeah. I'm looking at the money line. Also, Auburn versus Iowa State in the Maui Invitational tomorrow night is out. Auburn is a 1.5-point favorite there as well. So if any of these lines or, any of this is intriguing to you, head over to FanDuel.com. Right now, new customers get $5. You get $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. All that is over at FanDuel.com. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. The most fun version of this that we've done this year. That's for freaking sure.
Absolutely.
Biggest win of the Hugh Freeze era. It gives you so much to point to as far as proof of concept, which is kind of this fun term that we've really kind of said over and over again over the last several years. But like when you look at it, like what that means, like that's really the only thing that's been lacking with everything that he's been able to do on the recruiting trail. But clearly it hasn't mattered that much. It probably has mattered to some recruits, and it might matter to some recruits that they potentially flip between now and early signing day. But they've all believed him. right? They've all believed what the staff has been selling with Deuce 9, now then Henderson. And I mean, the list goes on and on. Those are just kind of the names that we discuss the most. But the eagerness and excitement, and there's been a million different videos posted on social media from a million different angles of the whole recruiting section getting to midfield within seconds of the game being over. It's like they were more excited than any of the fans. They can't wait to be a part of this.
That's the thing, is that you can buy in and believe what a coach is selling you and really truly believe it with your heart and have faith. But sometimes until you witness it with your own eyes, the proof of concept thing we're saying, or until it happens, then when it happens, sometimes it's even better than you could have imagined. And I think that's what they got caught up in. Look, it was a perfect storm last night. There were a lot of variables that had to hit. Number one, it was a ranked opponent. It was a night game. It was as electric as I've been in Jordan-Hare in a very long time. There were some other things that happened around the country that kind of lent itself to this too. The right people were there at the right time. A 4 overtime game adds to the drama and the release of nervous energy when it's over. All those things you did. You had to have what I would consider to be the perfect storm, and it happened. I will just say this too, is the way Texas A&M handled itself in certain aspects, pregame, during overtime, their interaction with the Auburn sidelines, the interaction with the Auburn fans also ratcheted this up a little bit.
Break that down for me. What, I'm asking you to be a little more specific with that.
You could go to X, first of all, and check out the video that I put out there if anyone wants to watch it. Texas A&M had a little chant going to the Auburn student section, to the Auburn end zone that was about as vulgar and as foul as I've ever seen. And
Who was chanting it? The fans?
No. 10 Texas A&M players and making hand gestures. It's right there to see.
Players were doing a chant?
Yes, they have a chant.
How did I miss you post this? Interesting.
I posted it and said, use those fingers to put it in the shape of an L instead. And you could pretty much fill in the blanks. And then the audible sounds of things they're saying, I probably should put a disclaimer and say, excuse the language, because it's rough.
You don't need to say it. You don't need to say it.
No, I'm not saying it. I'm saying I should have done that on X. I should have said,
got it.
Yeah. So, but it was, I've never seen that. It was bizarre. And they were really reveling in it. And it was like I said, it was as foul as anything I've seen from an opposing team. And they were doing a lot of that same kind of stuff to the Auburn sideline. There's one thing to taunt and celebrate. This was above and beyond. And it's this little cheer they have. And it's just really disgusting. Well, it was, the recruits are in that end zone. At some point, and they're witnessing this during timeouts, overtime, that kind of thing. So I think that added to it. Look, everybody talks smack, and I get all that, and I'm certainly no wallflower and very delicate person that kind of stuff bothers me. This was bizarre, though.
Yeah,
and people will get a chance, and they'll get a chance to see it on my Twitter, and they'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
All right, so if you want more context to that, if you need to know it exactly, I think we all can kind of guess, but. If you want more specifics, go check out Darrell's Twitter. You can see it there on the screen at Dap6410 for those listening on audio. So Edward asked, was Naeem offered at the game?
He was one of the very
first
question. People. Yes, he was there, and he was one of the very first people that rushed the field. And by indications of his closing speed from the time where he got where he was to the 20-yard line, if this kid flips, he's special.
So just full, should I? Yeah, I'm going to share this. So I was out of town this week. I just got back, like literally 5 minutes before we went live. But this is important. We wanted to do it. I'm getting in bed at our hotel room. My kids are asleep on the other side on like the pull-out couch or whatever, and I get a call from somebody that knows, and I'm like, I need to go out in the hallway and have this conversation because the rest of my family was asleep. This last night went a long way with Offered.
It really did.
We've talked about this in the past before, like Philip Dukes has come on several times, and he's close to Offered, and he's talked about like a win would go a long way. He talked about it in the context of Was it Oklahoma that he was here? Maybe. I feel like he's been here a lot. I think it was Oklahoma though, where it's like they want to see him win. They want to see him win. They want to roll tumors. He wants to play for a winner, and that's not a bad thing. And I think last night changed things in two recruitments. I think it solidified a lot of guys that were already here. But
True.
as far as guys who aren't currently committed to Auburn, I think it went a long way with Naeem Offord, and I think it went a long way with Usman Chroma.
Yep. And I think it went a long way solidifying Jared Smith, Malik Autry, Deuce Knight.
Yeah, and I wasn't really worried about them.
Right.
I was Smith, actually.
Right.
But the other two, like, there's a narrative, that, Malik Autry, I feel like it's popped up every few weeks, and we're almost running out of time. But like with Deuce Knight, like, I was never really concerned about the Ole Miss thing. But if you were concerned, I don't know how you are now. I don't know what else you need to see. But as far as those two guys, to me, from a recruiting standpoint, those are the two I'm watching in response to last night.
I agree. And of course, our guy, Kenyatta Watson, keeps throwing out little hints on Twitter and talks about the hotline buzzing this morning. When he got up this morning, he put that. So I think that all goes in line with what happened last night. You could hear that as you were walking through the recruiting lounge last night. There was some buzz and some conversation and some talk, and in the media room and in the press conference room, there's just a lot of different people have a lot of different sources, but when they all start to line up, and you start having conversations about what everybody hears, and it's the same thing, it's pretty apparent. And so I think that, again, you make such a good point about this early on in the show, is that the proof of concept thing we talk about ad nauseum, and they were still buying in without seeing it, but it's just hard to explain until you see it. Like last night, like when you experience that, it all came together.
And I talked about that last night when I went live. And if you want to go check that out, you can. Terrible internet. I'm so sorry. Maybe it's a Tennessee thing. I've never had good internet anywhere I've ever been in Tennessee.
They sabotaged you, man.
I guess so. Those dang Vols. But we've seen like glimpses of the proof of concept, right? Like we saw like parts of it against Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. We saw parts of it against Kentucky.
Missouri.
Missouri for sure. And it's just, it doesn't matter if you can't close, right? And they finally closed.
I'm glad you said that. It's different. Thank you. I'm so glad you said that.
You're welcome.
It's a completely different close than the Kentucky game for two reasons. Kentucky's not near as good as Texas A&M. The fact that they did it in Lexington is a little more impressive, but it never felt. It was a two-score lead, and it never felt in danger because how inept Kentucky was on offense, right? You just were like, they're not moving the ball on it, especially with the backup quarterback coming in. They're not moving the ball on Auburn. And it's different when you close a 3-point lead after trailing by 3 late in the fourth quarter to tie it up to send it into overtime, or a 2-point lead, whatever it was. That's different. And closing in overtime is a different animal. It really is.
Yeah, against a ranked team. And also, like, you're battling mentally, and this is a real thing. You're battling mentally the fact of, are we about to let another one slip away?
Yes.
Are we going to find another way to lose a freaking football game?
Because everybody, and if you say you're not, maybe you're not being honest with yourself, and I'm not being hard on you, because it's everybody had that same feeling like, oh, here we go again. Right.
For me, it was on the final drive. Even when we got into field goal range, I'm like, we're going to miss the kick.
Oh, I know. I got the receipts right here.
But I think a meltdown alone in a lobby in the dark in the middle of Tennessee. Maybe I was.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
I was.
I got you. I also feel like when you're trying to overcome the demons that pop into your head about, oh, here we go again. And I'm not one of these guys that plays the blame game on officiating. But you get two absolutely brutal calls at back-to-back, one no call and one awful call on the offensive pass interference. It really starts to get in your head that maybe, okay, here we go again. This isn't our year. This is gonna happen again, because that was that was really crucial. That was in overtime. It could have been disastrous if Vashon misses the 40-yard field goal after they backed him up with the offensive pass interference. Auburn would have had the ball first and goal inside of the 5, and if they score there, they win instead of a field goal. So there was a lot of what ifs there that they had to overcome mentally, and it was and there were some officiating issues down the stretch too, no doubt.
Do we want to talk about the negative stuff, or do we just want to leave it alone?
Let's just leave it alone. It's why I say leave it alone is because it reared its head, it's played itself out, and Auburn
like
slayed
the false
the draft.
start stuff is like, how did that happen? But
I was completely.
There is one I want to talk about though.
Yes,
and it's going to be through a different lens than I've seen any other angle on this, and I think it's important. And I've already seen a ton in the live chat today. That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time's the best place to buy tickets for anything: football, basketball, baseball, comedy, the theater. It doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter what it is. Darrell, you love Game Time. I love Game Time. It's the best place to buy tickets. Not even close. Not even close.
Yeah, I love it. I'm already looking at some stuff for next year for some NFL games to kind of see some things from next year from NFL games. And again, we can use them for anything we want to go, any form of entertainment or sports. And that's the beauty of it.
That's right. That's right. So right now, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. What time is it?
Game time.
Yes. So something I've seen a ton of, and like, you're not wrong when you look at one specific thing, but the amount of crap Auburn's punting situation is getting from last night with Oscar Chapman wasn't great.
It was horrible. It was horrible. Wasn't great as being kind. Wasn't great as being charitable. It was terrible. And it almost cost Auburn.
It was bad.
Field position.
It was bad. But like, I'm gonna be like pro Oscar here. It's like he has helped Auburn way more than he's hurt Auburn this year, especially in these low scoring games. And when Auburn's been close and he's kept them in field position battle has been a big part of it. Chapman has been a good punter. And so I think we're being a little too hard on him, but that might just be my opinion.
It's because there's a trend where it seems like he's in a slump. It's not just one game. He punted really, really good early on, but the last 2 or 3, he seems to be in a funk. And thankfully against ULM, it didn't matter. He hit one last night, Zach, that looked like he just didn't even kick his leg all the way. Like he just did it. I thought he was hurt. I was like, he didn't follow through. He just kind of went halfway and short kicked.
Maybe we're just broken on special teams this year.
Yeah. But now let me say this, because I'll always try to look at the positive. I want to be, bright side. He made a phenomenal hold on a horrible snap on one of the key Auburn field goals that a lot of people don't get that down. And even Hugh Freeze commented about it in the press conference. It was a great job by him to get the hold down.
There you go.
So there you go.
Perry didn't play. Do we care? Do we care that Perry Thompson didn't play last night?
I care more about his tweet after the game than I do that he didn't play.
I was surprised by that.
I was very encouraged by that. We just getting started, that kind of thing. So I would have liked to seen him get in on a couple of go routes, that kind of thing, utilize his speed. But I mean, Robert Lewis had a couple of big catches last night, Zach. He really did. He stepped up. He had a really big catch on a drive.
Robert Lewis played 43 snaps last night. Auburn has 78 snaps on offense. Robert Lewis played 43 of them, which is actually more than I realized.
Big catches, and then you had KLS, and you had Cam Coleman, and then Fairweather had a couple big catches. So
Fairweather had a good game, man.
He did. There was one pass that he caught he's so good at catching balls below his knees that I think if Thorne would have led him, would have been 25, 30 yards downfield. He did a good job just even getting the first down. I liked certain aspects of Peyton Thorne's game last night were there that weren't there all year. Like he's keeping his eyes downfield when he scrambled. The run that he had in the drive that tied the game was big. And people need to give him credit for that. The play broke down and he got 20-something yards on the ground, and those 20-something yards ended up being huge.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I did expect more like design runs for Peyton.
I did too. I mean, there were a couple times, and I guess it always looks that way, but I thought, man, if he would have pulled it there instead of just giving it to Jarquez, he could have gotten 15 yards.
But I don't think that's always. I don't think that's like. I think it's supposed to look like that, but I don't think that's what the read is. I think the read is you fake it and then you look to pass. I don't think it's like that often where it's called for him to run.
Right.
So.
It just looks like if he, looking at it after the fact,
No, I'm with you, man.
Hunter got 3 yards. Oh my gosh, if he pulls that, he gets 15, but that's not the read. So
yeah, I mean, I don't think defenses are accounting for him to run off of design anymore. I think he'll do like off schedule stuff, which is what that big run on the game tying drive was. But how many did he end up with rushing? 38, but that's sack adjusted.
Includes sack. How many times did he get sacked? 3 times?
I don't know. It's on a different page for some reason.
I thought he got sacked about 3 times. And it seems like every time he gets.
Why can't I see this? Yeah, twice.
Twice, okay.
And that's 2 sacks.
That's not bad. I thought it was more, but they were big chunks of yardage. They always are. Obviously, it seems like he doesn't get sacked for a 4-yard loss. It always seems like
we only lost 10 yards on those 2 sacks, which I kind of find hard to believe, but that's what it is. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I just the Cam Coleman performance in the first half was, I mean, it was just tremendous.
Yeah,
it was just tremendous, and I wonder how much of it has to do with like this has to be somewhat personal to him. Like he was committed to Texas A&M for a hot minute.
And how about KLS chose between Auburn and Texas A&M?
You know what? I forgot that. That A&M was second. He apparently turned down more money to come here. So, yeah, it's pretty wild to think about. And those 2 guys went off for 100 each. It's just
you think about it too. It's one thing to do what Cam Coleman did last week against Louisiana Monroe. It's another to do it. He had 1 less touchdown, but I think he had more receiving yards and more receptions yesterday than he did the previous Saturday. So to do that against the Texas A&M defense that was playing pretty well, Elko's known as a defensive-minded coach. He's hitting his stride. Now let's go for the trifecta and have him go off next Saturday.
Yeah. Coleman he was targeted 6 times for 6 catches for like 103 yards and 3 touchdowns, I think, last week. And he had 7 catches for 128. Like.
Oh, yeah, 8 for 100. He had 8 for 100 last week.
8 for 100?
8 for 100 and 3 touchdowns, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right. So, yeah, I mean, the fact that he was able to have a similar stat line against this Texas A&M team, it's great.
They're and this is where you see how talented this Texas A&M team is and that roster and the size because these are the kids that were part of that recruiting class that was just historical 2 or 3 years ago, right? The number 1 class in the country that Jimbo brought in. Yeah. A lot of these kids, I know some of them have left, but a lot of these kids that are still there, you're seeing them come into fruition now and start to hit their stride. And they are they just have so much talent. And that Reed kid, I think, is going to be a pretty good quarterback. He's dynamic with his legs. He's hard to contain.
Yeah, he's fun to watch. He's a passer, too.
He throws it in good windows. If not for guys like Riddick and Mausi doing a really good job of stepping in and like tripping him up around the legs when he was about to break containment, he could have had 30, 40, 50-yard runs. So give them credit too. But he's a really good player. They got really good receivers. Their offensive line just moves people off the ball. It's so weird when you're watching a game, Zach, and you go, oh, okay. And especially from the angle that we're watching it from, you're thinking that's a 2-yard gain. And then the PA announcer says gain of 5, gain of 4. It's just they fall forward, their backs, and that offensive line gets a 2 or 3 yard push every time. I say all that to say even more of a credit for Auburn's defense to do what they had to do. They gave up some yardage and some points in the second half, but I think when they needed it most, they made some stops.
Yeah. See, they're already starting to try it. The Steven guy says, come on, that was a game of a mid team and a bad team. They're already trying to push it like Texas A&M's not this good football
They're not
team.
mid. I mean, they're
a good football team.
They're a good football team. They're definitely a top 20 team, anybody that's in the top 20 is not mid.
Yeah,
period.
they will.
They're
fall
playing
out
for
of
the
top 20.
SEC, and they're more than likely. I mean, they have to beat Texas unless some other things happen, but they are in line to play in the SEC title game if they win Saturday at home. That's not mid. Sorry, strongest conference in the country, top 2 in the conference right now is not mid. That's just not being realistic. It's okay to enjoy something and have some joy in
it's
life.
hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. The mental gymnastics people try to do to like not be happy about stuff. Jarquez Hunter, 32 touches. 32 touches.
Let's be honest, too. We got
overtime impacts
perspective overtime. Sure. But if you take away his overtime touches, he still was over 25, 26, 27 touches. And I was screaming, hallelujah, amen, praise the Lord from the press box, because they did it within the confines of the offense, too. They didn't force it. I mean, Peyton Thorne threw it. I guess I can't remember what his stats were. I wrote them down. I think it was, did he throw it 29 times? I don't remember what his total.
Peyton was 19 of 31.
31. So I like that balance, man. And then you look at the offensive yards with the balance, 301 yards passing and 168. Look at that. Rain Man got it. 168 yards rushing. That's good balance. And Texas A&M came into this game, albeit against some lesser opponents, stacked, averaging 212 yards a carry on the ground, Zach.
Yeah.
And Auburn did a good job of, I mean, a team like that's going to get theirs. If you hold them under 200, you got a good chance to win.
Yeah. So like now the question is, can they do that 2 weeks in a row? Can you let Jarquez Hunter eat one more time?
He had a good game against Alabama last year. I think that's going to have to be the game plan. We'll see what frame of mind, and we got so much to talk about. We'll talk about it more later in the week, but what frame of mind Alabama is in. Do they come out and play a different type of game and play less inspired because they feel like the playoffs are not a realistic opportunity and that opportunity has gone by, so they have nothing left to play for? I mean, it's the Iron Bowl. Is there that? I don't know. Milroe looked off? Something doesn't seem right with him. Physically, we'll see.
Yeah.
And so
Oklahoma was able to run it and run it.
Yeah.
And run it. Jackson Arnold had 130. Xavier Robinson had 107. Both of them averaged over 5 yards a carry. Robinson almost averaged 6 at 5.9, 2 touchdowns. I just think Jarquez can run it on him. I think Auburn can run it on him.
I think Peyton Thorne can too. I do. And remember, he did last year, and I think he can do it this year. This is a game where you're going to probably have to have more design quarterback runs. I think, like you said, Jarquez can. If Alston comes in and gives him a spell, he ran it effectively. Alston had some really nice runs against him last year. So, yeah, that's got to be the game plan. You still got to have balance. You still got to throw it, especially because I suspect they'll probably load the box. I think Kane Womack will definitely go heavy box to try to stop that and force Peyton Thorne to beat him.
Oklahoma passed it 12 times.
See, that's amazing. I mean, but of course, they also got a pick six. Did they get a pick six too? So they only scored about 17 offensive points. But, yeah, that's the kind of game, if you're Auburn, you want it to be an ugly slobber knocker game. In the teams would be nice, like the old Iron Bowls were, right?
Yeah, you want that clock running, and you want it to look ugly, 100%.
And you just want to run, and you want to keep Monroe on the sidelines and Ryan Williams on the sidelines and just ball control. Yeah, keep it close. Different team in Tuscaloosa. I get it. I mean, Alabama has – the only losses they have this year have all been on the road. They haven't lost at home. So that's a factor. And Auburn hadn't won there since 2010. So
I mean, just the messaging you could do, and we'll get into this more over the course of the week, but like a win in Tuscaloosa propels Auburn because all of a sudden everything Hugh Freeze was saying he was building becomes true. And then if DeBoer loses, it's like they'll freak out up there.
Well,
they're going to freak out.
It would, first of all, it would be one of the most unlikely stretches down the home stretch of finishes of Auburn after the Vandy game. If you would have told anybody they win 3 in a row and get to 6 wins and then get to a bowl, it would have been so unlikely. And so that in itself would be such a special way to end the year, because now you're Iron Bowl champs, and then you're going and playing in a bowl game. You get another month of practice, maybe not lay an egg in the bowl game this time, which probably more than likely wouldn't happen because Auburn's playing a bunch of young guys anyway. And those young guys would play in the bowl game,
Yeah, I don't really care about if Auburn wins the bowl game or not. Like, I'd like for them to have a winning season. Sure, 7-6 looks way better than 6-6, and we are getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. But to me, it's the practices. The practices is kind of just the gold that you can't afford to lose if you're Auburn.
I just think at some point, Auburn fans too that make those trips and pay that money and stay in those hotels, it's time for a payoff to get a nice win in one of those and do have that winning season. So
I get it.
Again, I am getting way ahead of myself. I'm just saying why that win sounds so different than any other at 6-6, because
I get it. I totally get it.
If you would have told anybody that, if you tell people that at the beginning of the year, they say, "Oh, that's a crappy season. We can do better than 6 wins." You give people that opportunity after Vanderbilt, they're jumping off a roof to get that. So,
sure. And at least then it would be like a step in the right direction. And also the context of this would be you'd have 2 ranked wins, which would be insane. But yeah, they got to win in Alabama first, which is obviously going to be more difficult than anything they've done so far this year. So we'll see. We'll see. Any other angles last night that are crucial that we need to discuss? Because there's still a lot of them out there. I mean, it's such a big win.
I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room angle. How many times has Peyton Thorne absolutely shut down, didn't come back from psychologically, mentally, when he threw a big interception that seemed costly? He threw that interception
every time. He
threw that interception that thankfully Auburn's defense did really, really well and held them to a field goal. He bounced back from it. And even when people were false starting all around him, when the ref called offensive pass interference on a nice throw underneath, when he threw a nice ball to KLS who got held in the end zone, he did not crumble from that. He did not cave. And that was nice to see. And I think for somebody that's been much maligned, I've been there, I've said it, I've been part of that much malignment. But for him to bounce back and not cave and not check out mentally after the interception, I did watch Freeze really closely after the interception, and he did not jump his tail. He kind of had his arms folded and shook his head as Thorne went sprinting by him, but he didn't really get into him a little bit. And I hope maybe that was a reason why mentally he stayed in it, came back, and give him credit for that. That's an angle that is very underrated. I still see people jumping all over him in social media after the game and all that. I'm going, what more could he have done? Yeah, he threw a bad interception. But, you start looking at his numbers. Have you seen the graphic that's getting out there on social media, on the comparison graphic? You know what I'm talking about?
I haven't seen it.
His statistics in Milrose?
No, I haven't seen it.
It's shocking. FanDuel would have had that at an unbelievable odds. But Peyton Thorne's statistics, as opposed to Jalen Milrose going to the Iron Bowl, you could have bet me any amount of money. And the comparison.
Well, Peyton has more yards.
He's got more touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And what's his interceptions compared to Milrose?
Oh, wow. Peyton has 8 picks. Miller has 9.
Yep.
Peyton has 20 touchdowns through the air. This doesn't account for rushing.
Right.
And then Miller has 15.
And about 100 more yards. Now, Milrose got more total yards, I'm sure, because he's so dynamic running the football. And I get it. But if you just would have thrown up passing statistics and showed people that at the beginning of the year and said, would you believe this? They'd say, no way. No way.
Yeah, that's wild to me.
So, give him some credit.
Peyton is the 5th leading passer in the SEC, and he missed the New Mexico game.
I know. And we said we would have if you would have told us at the beginning of the year that he was going to be top 5, we'd say we're in 9 games. All he's got to improve from 12 to 5. We'd have been like, he moved 7 spots. And there's Hunter. I don't know, Sampson, what he did against UTEP last night. I guess he's still the leading.
He was ahead by a lot. Yeah, he's up by like 150-ish, 160 still.
So, and then you got KLS, who.
But he also has like 60 more touches.
Not to be disrespectful of your Penn State cohort, because I know you guys work together, but he was completely wrong about KLS being a number one receiver. He is every bit a number one receiver.
Yep.
So Auburn got
number 3 receiver in the SEC when it comes to yardage, and he is tied for first when it comes to touchdowns.
That's a number one receiver in my mind on your team. It just is. And so all those boxes got checked, but no one could have foreseen the stuff that happened that was just inexplainable and self-inflicted. So at the end of the day, they put some of those ghosts to bed last night, I think, though, and that's good. They put those to rest, and now they can focus on saying, okay, if we fall behind, or no, if Auburn jumps out to a nice lead or guts out in front of Alabama, and Alabama comes storming back like we know they would, Auburn can draw from, well, this just happened to us last week and we won. It's not going to be this, oh, here we go again. The most recent memory is going to be one of a victory and overcoming, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. Does KLS break 1,000 yards? He needs like 120.
I thought somewhere somebody said he'd have to have a good game against Alabama, and then they'd have to get to a bowl game. I don't.
He's at 865. So
yeah,
he'd need what, 140, 135, something like that.
Yeah, I think he would need 2 games to do that.
Yeah. If Auburn wins, he plays in the bowl game. I think.
Right. Absolutely. And he's a guy that'll play on Sundays, and that's so special. You know, you'll see Jarquez Hunter and KLS.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how the NFL views KLS. Because I think there will be some teams that like him.
Absolutely. He's got a deep threat. He's good with the ball after the catch.
This might be one of those guys that, goes to the Senior Bowl when you and I are down there in Mobile and we talk to a few scouts and they're like, yeah. KLS, like, I like his tape. I like his stuff.
Senior Bowl is going to be fun with like a Jarquez Hunter and a Rivaldo Fairweather and a.
You think Jarquez goes?
I don't know. That's a great point. Does he even need to, really?
Yeah. Rivaldo screams Senior Bowl to me for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's going to be like Eugene Asante does.
Right.
Ausi does.
Yep.
Jaron Thompson does. Like, Auburn should have some pretty solid draft representation.
What a great portal pickup that's been for Auburn.
Jaron?
Texas, yes.
Depends on the play, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That pick last night really set the tone.
Yeah. I was a little worried about your guy, Jay Crawford, hurting himself on that tackle, missed tackle at the 3-yard line. He kind of blew up his shoulder, was holding his arm. But I will tell you that his arm was healthy enough to hold a cigar afterwards in the game. So I think we're good.
Do you see the picture of Thorne sitting in his locker smoking the cigar?
There's even a better one. There's a side shot with the picture of Thorne and then the picture of a Len Dawson in the 70s with the Kansas City Chiefs smoking a cigarette and they're right next to each other. It's like, it's a pretty cool picture.
Tough. Pretty tough.
Yep, it is. So it was an overall, you could just tell. I actually will say it felt that way on the field before the game too. You could just sense something in the air. It was different.
Really?
Yeah. It was, and then Auburn getting out.
And like, I mean, how many times have we said that though this year? Where it's just like, man, Auburn's got a chance to make a statement, and then they get so close, and then something happens, and it almost was that again, but just in dramatic fashion.
I think they cleaned up some of the things that hurt them early on, and it did rear its head a little bit in this game. But there were some things that they stopped doing the last 3 or 4 games. It was getting them beat early in the season. They were still just getting beat by Vanderbilt. The Vanderbilt game's the outlier. That's a game. You go back and look at this whole season, Zach, and you could say Oklahoma, Missouri. What game would you like to have back and play over again? Cal. And I just would love at home to have seen Auburn play a better game against Vanderbilt, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just if one of those goes different, we're just talking about this team in a totally different light.
I know.
It's super frustrating. Super frustrating. I mean, obviously Hugh Freeze seemed fired up after the game, but I just wonder, like, what he thinks in regards to, like, is he constantly thinking about, man, if, like, what happened against Cal and what happened against Arkansas?
He said it in the press conference.
I saw that.
It's hard to do it, and that we should have 2 or 3 more wins. You don't want to think about it, but you do. So, yeah, he does. He does. He knows.
Since you're so close, and there's been people on Twitter and on this live chat that have been like, Auburn just dropped pass away from, losing another close game. It's like, okay, but if you're going to do that logic, if you're going to do that logic, well, A&M's like several close plays from not even forcing overtime. Like if we're really doing that, or if you want to like really do that, you can say Auburn is like a play or two away from beating Cal, beating Arkansas, holding on against Missouri and Oklahoma. Like you can't do that one way and ignore it the other. Like that's ridiculous.
True. I want to say something too. This is just purely educational. I'm not calling anybody out, but there is somebody in our chat that talks about smoking cigars and saying it's not like they won a championship or something. Just for perspective, there are certain games that during the regular season, regardless of the opponent's record, that teams that win that game smoke cigars. Auburn and LSU, Tuberville's first year, they beat LSU to go 3-0, and they fired up cigars. You know, Alabama and Tennessee, every time they play. This was a big game and a big win. You don't have to win championships to smoke cigars. There are cigar games.
Yeah, I think you see them more on not championships and championships because you got so much other stuff going on with it.
Yeah.
I also think there's a human element of this that people forget. Like with it being senior night, like this meant something. Like this meant something to these kids. It meant something to this team. And clearly it meant a lot to the fan base. And just to say like, oh, that's slightly different, so it's bad for you to do, like that's just stupid and selfish and ignorant. And it shows like you don't really understand what these kids are going through every day. I mean, these guys are competitive. They're working their tails off. And these seniors that have been here, which there are a few seniors that, celebrated last night that haven't been here as long. KLS is probably the big one, Jaron Thompson. But a lot of these guys that have been here for more than 3 years, like they've been through a lot of crap. They've been through multiple coaching changes and a lot of drama, both from outside and inside the program. And they chose to stay. Why? Because they love Auburn and they love this fan base. And people have talked about like, well, they could get more playing time somewhere else and they compete for a championship. It's like, sure, that is important for some people. But also when you talk to these kids and the type of personality that Auburn typically attracts, it's a little deeper than that. And we want to do the whole family thing until it doesn't fit a specific narrative. But like, quit it. Enjoy the win last night. It's the biggest win of the Hugh Freeze era. It's the biggest win since Auburn beat Ole Miss in 2021.
Halloween night. Yeah.
It's like, get over yourself. It's okay to be happy about things. Like, what are we doing here?
Well, anybody that's complaining about and making fun of the fans rushing the field, go ask KLS if it was fun and important that the fans rush the field when he's swag surfing in the crowd after the game on the field. How special of a moment did he earn and have fun and have joy? And that moment doesn't happen if the fans don't rush the field, lift him up, whatever they do. That's part of that experience is interacting with your fans. The Georgia player got a little bit confused and did it with the opposing team's fans, but still, that's a big moment for players that work really, really hard to celebrate with the fans. And KLS was right there in the middle of it, loved it. Ask him if it mattered to him that fans rushed the field. See what he says.
Yeah. Any of those seniors, man. Any of those seniors. Like, and Auburn apparently got fined when we've been live. So I got a feeling they'll pay it. Got a feeling they'll pay it. What an incredible game. And we get to talk about it for a few more days, but the Iron Bowl is here. And Auburn's got more of a shot in it than we ever thought that they would a month ago, which is super exciting.
They have something to play for, and that's fun, right?
Arguably, they have more to play for than Alabama does. And I think that is – Alabama's an uncharted territory. I mean, they don't go into the Iron Bowl with 3 losses very often, Darrell.
Right. No, you're right.
What does this look like in that
locker room? What does it look like with Auburn fighting for their lives for bowl eligibility and Alabama all but being out of the playoff picture? What that dynamic of that game changes if Auburn's 4-7 going, no matter what happens, we can save our season, and Alabama's playing to go to the playoff. That's a whole different deal. Now, of course, in these games, more often than not, the better team just they win. There's not a lot of huge upsets in this rivalry like there is others. But who knows? We'll see. The dynamics have changed, in my opinion. The dynamics have changed of this.
All the Alabama people I've talked to today, including Luke Robinson of Locked On Bama, we were talking earlier, planning our crossover for the week. That'll drop on Thanksgiving, or it's expected to. But I'm like, who are you thinking this? He's like, I'm picking Auburn. That's right now. Now he may change his name by the time we record, but He's like, I don't like how this feels. And I'm like, sweet. I do like how it feels. So we'll see. I feel weirdly confident about it. I feel like I hate how confident I feel about it.
I don't want you to. I want you to feel like you did last week, please.
Me too.
Don't ever screw with the winning streak like Kevin Costner said in Bull Durham. I'm paraphrasing.
Oh, man.
You need to feel the closer we get to Saturday, I want you to come on our show and say, Darrell.
Yeah, Friday, even if I don't believe it, Friday, I'm just going to be like,
and I'm going to go,
we get to the game.
Get closer. Yeah. Well, look, even a blind squirrel, the first time I've picked Auburn all year to win other than the 3 group of 5 games that they've won. Because remember, I refused to pick them against Kentucky. I'm like, they're going to have to show me that they can win. First time
you picked them against Oklahoma. That's kind of the game that broke you, right?
That's what I'm saying. That they've won that I've picked. I picked them against Arkansas. I picked them against Oklahoma. I picked them against Vanderbilt. I mean, I kept doing it. And that's why I said to you last week, and you laughed, I must be the biggest idiot on the face of the earth, but I just have a feeling that they're going to win. And of course, it's just lucky that they did. For me, I'm saying it has nothing to do with knowledge. But
I got you.
Anyway.
Yeah. All right. So tomorrow, normal day of scheduling. Me and Lindsay are expected to be on in the morning, and then we'll react to Hugh Freeze's presser tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow night, after Auburn takes on Iowa State in the Maui Invitational, it'll be late. But Darrell and I will be live
3 nights in a row. They're going to see us 3 nights in a row.
Yep. And 2 of them are going to be very late, probably. But that's okay.
Coffee.
That's okay.
Oh, the light show. A light show just happened there. I just got a light show in my eyes. I think there's a little mini light show trying to get fired up.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you confirm if Auburn wins against Iowa State?
It looked like an usher. It looked, if what now?
Iowa State?
Again, sources say whoever does those light shows for me, it might be too late. They might be unavailable at the time. So
got it. All right. So be on the lookout for that. Yep. Tune in just to see. Darrell, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Well, a lot of me for the next 3 days, 4 days, 5 days with you, the regular shows, the basketball shows. And then follow me on X, DAP6410, and Instagram, Darrell Dapp. Drop some videos on there. And about 3 hours ago, dropped an article in the barn. A little DAP recap. Really did a deep dive this time, a fun one, a little bit longer than normal, but it was fun to do.
Yep. thebarnauburn.com. Go subscribe. They're not running that like first month for $1 much longer. So go ahead and jump in on that. You'll get signing day. You'll get transfer portal stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever coaches they need to replace or move around, whatever. So get all that at thebarnauburn.com. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.